Gillian Anderson, welcome to the programme.
Thank you for having me.
What's brought you back from film or TV?
Oh, well, I like to do stage every 3 or 4 years, and but the last play that I did was Streetcar, and it's difficult, I think, to find something once you've done Tennessee Williams or something like Blanche Dubois. It's challenging to find something that could potentially be as meaty or challenging. And enjoyable. My partner had suggested I might want to look into...
Your partner is?
Peter Morgan.
Oh, right,
writer.
the creator of The Crown and all sorts of other things.
And quite soon after we got together, he said, have you ever thought about looking into doing an adaptation of All About Eve as a play?
How much do you love this play, this story?
It's a wonderful film.
Of course, with Bette Davis, the 1950 film, and Anne Baxter playing
and everybody
Margot, who you play,
yeah.
and Eve, who is your understudy, and then takes over.
Yeah, and hugely popular, won a lot of Oscars at the time.
So let's dig down a little bit. I mean, first and foremost, did you feel the pressure to Bette Davis it? Did you feel you should mimic or do something different? Because obviously your performance is completely different. Yeah. She was like sarcastic and incandescent, and you are, as they've described, somewhat glacial, much more controlled.
Yeah.
Just give us the seatbelt line.
Well, oh, no.
Come on.
No. Hang on. I'm going to answer your question first, which is that, you know, my understanding in going into work with Ivo is you come in knowing nothing. You have no idea how he's going to treat it, what it's going to end up as. I think in the end, we actually didn't even know what it was going to be until we were told what it was after the previews had started, really, because we're not in the audience and that so much is going on technically. And so also not knowing whether things were going to be cut, whether it was going to be present or past or an amalgamation of different eras. And so, you know, I think all of us kind of showed up with an empty mind and wanting to learn and be taught. And so in that process, one lets go of preconceived ideas of who this character is. And also, if you're working from the text alone is not bitchy. You know, the text is not acerbic and monstrous at all. And so, you know, a lot of... And also, what we don't realise, and seeing it again, I watched it before, I hadn't watched it...
The film?
Until before I sat down with Ivo, and then he said he wasn't working on the film. The script, yes, but would not watch it himself. But I watched it again for the second time this morning, just for you, to just have a conversation about what it is that Bette Davis actually does. And actually, a lot of her lines are quite gentle. She has a harsh face, and she is, but actually she's acting against that, and she's very often much gentler than we remember her. We have a tendency to misremember how monstrous she is.
So we tend to think she's very monstrous, and she's not.
And she's actually really not.
Can you do the
line?
I don't know. I've had Annie Lennox sing at this table.
Well, OK, hang on a second. So where we find Margot in this minute is that she, the party is starting, and she is starting to feel already usurped by this young actress who she has allowed to take over her life and to be her assistant.
Who stalked her.
Who essentially stalked her and now is living in her house and maybe making the move on her younger boyfriend and eventually will make the move on her career. Yeah. But in this moment is the very beginning of Margot's feeling that maybe this is happening, and they've got a welcome home party for her lover, for her boyfriend. Yeah, welcome home and birthday party. He's been away for a while, and he has spent the first 20 minutes not coming to say hello to me, but to say hello to this young girl in the other room. And so she's already grumpy and she's a little bit drunk. And her good friend Karen has said to her, you know, what's happening here? You know, why... we've seen you in this mood before. Is it over or is it just beginning? And she assesses them all in the room, all of her friends lined up in front of her, and says, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night. Or something.
I love it.
I can't believe it. You just asked me to do that.
fantastic because it goes to the heart of it. So let's talk about the really serious themes. First and foremost, this Ivo van Hove camera work is remarkable because one of the cameras is stuck right into the makeup mirror where you do a lot of your scenes. And there's one where you can see, you know, you're doing this with your face, you're taking off the makeup. And then there's another where you literally morph 10 years or more, 30 years.
Yeah, thanks. No, sorry.
Sorry, Gillian.
No, it's all right.
But what does that feel like? A, as a woman, B, as an actress? What does it feel like to be seen and shown doing that every night?
Oh, that doesn't bother me at all. I mean, that's the essence of, you know, it's one of the essences of what this play is about. It's not just about aging, but that is certainly, you know, at the core of her insecurity, you know, as well as you know, her whole life has been her work. And if she's no longer going to be able to even work, then what is she? And she doesn't even know. She keeps saying over and over again, she doesn't even know herself. So many people seem to know her, but she doesn't know herself. But to speak to what you just asked, there's not, I mean, aging is inevitable. It was fascinating to go through this prosthetic process that, so Ivo's right-hand man and husband of 30 years and production designer, art designer, came up with this idea of projecting, because there's a lot of video that's projected up on the screens above us, but projecting my face as I'm sat in front of the mirror, in front of the audience, up there, but going through an aging process of 30 years.
No, it was shocking.
And moving. But I'm touching my face at the same time, so you don't quite know what's happening. How am I, if I'm sat there touching my face, how is that aging working? So it's pre-recorded, it's 6 hours of prosthetics, extraordinary work by Millennium, who do a lot of movie work. And first of all, it was fascinating to go through the process. I mean, I'd aged before in something that I'd done, but it wasn't the quality that you get today in today's, you know, prosthetics that are done. And it was moving for me to see it in real life because there were no seams.
Not scary.
No, not scary. But I wonder if part of it not being scary is that I am, you know, in relationship with somebody who is my age. We are very aware of the fact that we are our age and celebratory of the fact that we are our age and that we are going through this together. And when I sent him these pictures, he was very moved and touched and felt compassion and love and understanding. And so which also then speaks to Margot's concern, which is if she's with somebody who's younger than herself, then is she with somebody who is not going to be able to hold her in these moments, hold her through menopause, hold her, understands through these changes? Is he going to ditch her for somebody younger? And will he be able to understand the pain and the trauma that everybody has to go through in coming to terms with it?
Did you, as an actress, worry, freak out that you'd be forgotten once you got to 50 or that you wouldn't get the roles? Did the whole aging thing in your real life, was it traumatic?
Well, I mean, I've been extraordinarily lucky in my career. You know, I continue to
One could say
work.
that you've aged in front of us for the last 25 years.
Yes, I have. Yes, yes. And I have been, you know, I keep working. And that doesn't happen for all actresses. I don't know what, you know, I have been incredibly lucky. And so that's first and foremost. But also, I have, you know, there have absolutely, even, you know, we were talking earlier about sex education, which we'll talk about in a minute.
We're going to talk about in a minute, yeah.
Which is in seeing myself on camera in that, when I first saw it, I thought, I've aged. Look, I'm so old. And
we're going to have to bleep, I've
sorry.
aged, yeah.
Oh my God, I said, oh my goodness.
There you go. But let's just, we're going to get onto sex education in a second, because that's a whole nother realm, and it's very different to Margot, and it's very relevant, and it's very of the zeitgeist right now, what you're doing on Netflix, sex education. But just to stick with the play for a second, I've read that you complain that you have a not very good memory and that it's hard for you to maybe remember all the dialogue.
It seems to be okay in theatre. What I really struggle with is doing speeches, doing interviews, doing press.
Like this?
Yes, doing anything that triggers anxiety of some kind. Yeah.
Are you anxious now?
No.
No, good.
No. I have had panic attacks in my life, in my earlier life, quite severe ones, and so that's always, you know, in the back of my mind. And
what would you tell young people who are so stressed right now, so anxious? Boys, girls, young people, middle-aged people, old people. Panic and stress and anxiety seem to be a very prevalent emotion right now.
Yes. Well, I think firstly is getting honest with oneself about the fact. I think very often we run and we push it into the background and we don't address it because it feels like a weakness of some kind. We don't tell somebody. We get more and more depressed or more anxious because we're keeping it at bay just and feeling like we have to, you know, juggle so much in life. And so I would say, first of all, find somebody to properly talk it through with. And then, you know, what I have found is that, you know, finding as much time for myself as possible. I've really struggled with that before. You know, I have 3 kids. You know, giving. I'm the last person that I think about. So whether that means 10 minutes in the morning to sit quietly, or going, you know, separately at lunchtime to take a break when one gets to decompress, have a meditation, or close one eyes, or just, you know, just taking care of oneself and communicating.
Well, communicating leads me right onto the other big thing that you're doing right now. So it's the Netflix series, Sex Education. You've completed series 1. It's up there. Everybody thinks it's phenomenal. I just did a series which ended up on Netflix as well. I did it for CNN called Sex and Love Around the World. Mine was more documentary. Yours is fiction set in an English high school.
Yeah.
What drew you to that? And were you surprised that you really hit the sweet spot? This is the zeitgeist. Everybody's talking about this right now.
I was so surprised. I'm going to be honest with you. I had started to read it, and as much as I embrace comedy, I don't get offered comedy very often, and really, really always on the lookout for comedy. I had thought, yes, but not this one. And I'd put it down, I'd got the offer, and I'd toss it away. And then, because my partner also works with Netflix and had heard that they were keen on it, had said, well, let me give it a read. And all of a sudden, I started getting these texts saying, you've got to pick this up again. It's hilarious. You've got to have a look. It would be so good for you to do this. And so begrudgingly, I picked it up again and laughed from beginning to end.
And it's phenomenal. I mean, I binge watched 5 of the episodes. I've got to watch the rest. Waiting for the next series. No,
but even after
I'm doing it as well.
No, it's so different from what we've seen before. It's so broad. You know, it's got no specific time, place, era. It's both American and British. Would people embrace that, or would it just confuse them?
I'm going to play a little clip. The only one we have at the moment is from the first episode of series 1. It's you. Anyway, you'll see.
Yes.
I mean, it's hilarious. So you're the sex therapist.
Yes.
Otis is your son.
Yes, played by Asa Butterfield.
Who's phenomenal. And then that's one of the people who passes, you know, through the night, let's say.
Yes, yes.
And what have you heard from young people? Because the real focus is on the kids and how they talk about sex and all the issues around it, whether it's bullying, whether it's performance anxiety, whatever it might be. What's the reaction been?
Well, I guess, I mean, what I've been surprised at is how, is the age range of viewers. I mean, hopefully not younger than 14, but, you know, from 14 to 70, I've had people, you know, emailing me. And I guess the response is how refreshing at this particular time specifically that we're able to have such a frank and an unflinching look at sex. But also, you know, you brought up communication. And so I play a sex therapist. My son, played by Asa Butterfield, takes it upon himself to be a sex therapist in his high school because he's grown up with it, basically. And he has a knack for it. But it's not that he's preaching, mostly what he's trying to to relay to his fellow students is about communication, communication between couples, the importance of intimacy, which, I mean, have we ever heard that word in high school ever? You know, let alone in our sex ed classes. And so there's something incredibly touching and moving about just those two things, even though we also, you know, see the painful, the awkward, the messy, the gross, the, you know, and these... You know,
the funny, the sometimes
funny,
violent,
yes,
and the bullying.
And
yeah.
these broad tropes
Yeah.
that are then, you know, counterbalanced and broken down.
Well, you seem to be embracing it. I gather your current Twitter bio says Gillian Anderson, shag specialist.
Oh, yes. I need to stop that now. It's been up for a month.
It's pretty funny. Just a quickie. You've just said that, you know, you're a working mother. Your first kid arrived while you were in mid-X-Files.
Yes, well, the first year.
First year of X-Files. But just on the issue, you were paid a lot less than your male co-star, David Duchovny.
Yes.
Maybe half as much as he was?
Oh, no, well, initially.
Initially. Well, I'm going to ask you how you
Yes.
changed it. And I even read that you had to, excuse me, get out of the car after him? Walk behind him?
Okay, yes. So initially, when I was cast, he was the star, and I was had never been seen ever in anything, pretty much, and so it made sense that our salaries were at a complete, you know, I don't even know what the percentage is, but completely different. In the third season, as it was successful and there were awards and it was the #1 show, it was the right time to negotiate, and it took a lot of negotiating. It took, you know, threatening to leave, did they not, you know, raise it up close to what his was, given that we were both doing the same amount of work. The big issue, and why it was brought up again recently, is when we went back in again, post the series ending and us coming back to do another series. Even 4 years ago, or whenever it was that we did it, they were offering me a third of what they were offering David. And we just could not believe
excuse me, how much?
We couldn't.
We being you and David?
No, we being me and my representatives who were getting the phone call saying they've offered you this and they've offered him that. And it was like, are you kidding me? So that was when I spoke about it again. And it's, you know, in this particular instance, it's a no-brainer because you can't have one without the other. Yeah. And so it was an easy negotiation for me. For most people, it's not so easy. And also the stakes are not so high. You know, they're not as high for me as they are for most people who have to sit in front of their boss and risk losing their job to be that bold, you know, or to ask for what they deserve. And so I struggle a little bit to have this conversation because
no,
this
but
is
it's
fantasy
important.
land.
It's not fantasy land. The more people ask and demand, the more it happens.
True. Yeah.
Finally, we've mentioned your partner several times, the great Peter Morgan. He is continuing with The Crown, and there's a whole nother series in Vision that's about to drop. And I understand that you're going to be playing Margaret Thatcher.
That has not been announced. We're not allowed to talk about it.
Would I be wrong?
We're not allowed to talk about it. When is this airing?
Would you like to play Margaret Thatcher?
Yeah. Should they come to me, or should they offer it to me, I would be delighted to play Margaret Thatcher. An extraordinary woman, Margaret Thatcher.
Okay. Well,
yes.
We'll see. We'll watch this space.
Yes.
Gillian Anderson
Thank you
in
so
London
much.
with All About Eve. Thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.